Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stay Hungry podcast. Today I've got Ben Owen from the 10X Tribe, and we're going to be talking about getting out of your own way. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Joel, real pleasure to be here, my man. Thank you for having me on, and
No,
excited to have this conversation.
no trouble. So I guess, and I always say this at the beginning of the podcast, and listeners are going to get sick, but for the uninitiated, who's Ben Owen?
Oh, thank you, man. Who am I? How deep do you want to go? So I'm a performance coach.
Yep,
I've been a performance coach my whole life. I started in body transformation, and I built a body transformation business for 12, maybe more years.
yep,
And what I actually enjoyed about that business was not the training people in the gym, which I was exceptional at. I really enjoyed that, but it was sitting in the consultation room asking someone about their life and their work and their relationships and their sex
yeah,
and their sex life and their finances, which was always the things that actually moved the needle when it came to someone performing. Um,
I mean, I'm going
and
to interrupt immediately.
yeah, go for it, man.
Every listener listening to this now is going, this bloke likes talking to people about their sex lives and how it moves the needle in their performance. Like,
Yeah. It's yeah, it's true though. It's like, anyway, if you want to dive straight into sex, I think for a lot of men and women, like men especially, like I would have guys sitting in my consultation room and they would tell me, like, this is so weird. Like, people say that you tell your barber everything, but you
yeah,
tell your personal trainer sometimes even more. And I would have guys, especially guys, disclosing to me about some struggles and challenges they were having around either their sex life with a partner, some of their like ways that they were feeling in their health, which meant they struggled with erectile dysfunction or they struggled with anxiety around sex. And it was like they didn't have anyone else to talk to about that. So I know we joke about that, but I became very, very au fait with talking about the body, so to
yeah,
the point
yeah,
where I have no issues about talking about it. So yeah, and actually the stress that gave them and got in their own way, that could have been a huge part of them performing in work, in their life. So yeah, it was a big component of what I would talk about with some guys.
yeah. No, totally understand that. All right, so let's wind it back a little bit before we get too deep. What's brought you to this point? How have we got here? What's the
Yeah.
story?
I think I've been asking that myself recently. I'm running in the middle of the desert. No, it was interesting. Joel came on my podcast and actually saw there's so many similarities. I had a bricks and mortar business. I was there 5 a.m., 6 a.m. every morning until 6, 7 p.m. at night. I lived in this gym and the previous gym before that for the best part of 10 years. I was working all of the time, workaholic. And I really got to this point where I was burning through relationships. I got divorced. Um, and I realized that I worked not to feel. I worked really hard not to feel the feelings that I was struggling with as a man, as a leader, and when COVID rocked around, so like I was coaching and running the gym, and when COVID rocked around, loads more people wanted personal coaching, and the gym was shut for 2 years. Like the gym was pretty much like we could not operate at our capacity. We had a very, very big gym. So, we were probably the worst affected by it because we were like 350 members, groups of like 50 to 100 people in at the same time. We were just like, people even didn't want to come because it was such big groups.
Yeah,
So the gym took a dive and I was like, hang on a second, do you know what? I've been doing this personal training, be calling myself a trainer for 15 plus years. Maybe I want to change. And so I just started coaching purely online. And I used to coach in person for, a number of years. And I just really enjoyed it. And what I realized is that I didn't have the bricks and mortar tie when I
yeah,
started going online. And then I thought, and then we had two kids, and I thought, hang on a second, actually, I could do this from anywhere. And one day went round to my buddy's house. He said, I'm moving to Dubai, moving back to Dubai. And I said to Poppy in jest on the way home from when we had dinner with them, imagine we went to Dubai. And she was like, that's funny because I've been thinking that I'd love to go and live in Dubai. And those conversations you have with your partner, and eventually we're like, we're moving to Dubai.
Yeah,
So we up sticks and left. It was really interesting because I do a lot with clients around identity. And
yeah,
my identity was this guy that lived in North Wales. I never was going to leave. I love North Wales. Really, I knew everyone. I go to Tesco and I'm like a celebrity, because I've trained so many people there. And then I came away and I was like, so it was a big, big shift for me. It was a huge shift. And that's it. I've been coaching online for the best part of gosh, 5, 6 years now, just online. And what was interesting was, this is how I got in touch with Joel, is that I was struggling because I've always had word of mouth sales. I've never had to advertise. And actually organic was my main driver for the business. And actually, as I've grown and as the business has evolved and the online game has changed, I've changed my strategy. And I was actually, that's how I met you, Joe. So that's how I got to this point.
nice, nice. Okay, so I'm going to delve a bit deeper. In your original business, the personal training, you said that you were working to mask feelings.
Mm.
What what are we talking about there? What was going on?
Yeah, so I think that I was definitely a self-confessed workaholic, trying to preach to people about work-life balance when I lived in the gym. It's just like I laugh, maybe uncomfortably, but the reality was there was so many repressed emotions that I felt as a guy, and I was a nice guy. So if you've not read the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, there's a
Yeah,
concept or a yeah, concept for most guys that they don't show their emotions, especially not anger, it's not especially not things like they've got no boundaries, people walk all over them, they people please, they try and be seen as this nice guy to get liked, loved, and have their needs met. And that's who I was. I brought up by my mother. Father, I was absent from the home, absent as a guy a little bit too, emotionally vacant father. I loved him, he loved me, but there was always this thing between us, which was long story, but it's that there was so much repressed emotion.
mm,
I hated showing anger. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be nice. And it was really strange that one day I walked into the gym and the light had been left on the whole night. And we had like a set of lights, which was like, it's the whole gantry of like a 10,000 square foot gym. And it was the match that broke the camel's back. I got so annoyed about this little thing from my team. I blew my top internally, but I didn't say anything. And so what I would describe myself as was the guy with the smile on my face, through gritted teeth. Inside, I was on fire, but then outside, I was projecting this happy-go-lucky, smiley,
yeah,
smiley guy. And that was what I was going on, and I think that so many men, especially men, like I'm speaking for men, but I guarantee women have the same experience. And in the same place, they want to be seen as this happy, nice, smiley, positive guy, which I am a very happy, smiley, positive guy, but I'm also angry, I'm aggressive, and all the things that a normal human being can be. And
yeah,
I was hiding all that with work, and I didn't understand how to work on that. So yeah, that was really what was going on. And I masked it with work.
yeah. No, I mean, there's worse things you could have masked it with. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I totally get it. I mean, you know my story. The listeners know my story, but very similar, very very similar. Like raised in a, but raised by my mum, completely understand the dynamics of like feminine emotion and that kind of thing. But male emotion, I didn't know what I was meant to do with it. And I'll give an example. Like there's some blokes that quite like the idea of a scrap.
Yeah.
I I used to sort of like be very confused by that.
Me too. Yeah. Very,
And but
very. That was my worst nightmare.
yeah, but when now I would say now I'm kind of more comfortable in my own skin, more aware of my emotions. I do kind of get it. I do like. I'm never gonna be the guy that goes out looking for a scrap. Like that's not what
No,
I'm
I get,
saying.
yeah.
But I completely understand. that there should be some testosterone there and a little bit of like oomph about you and a little bit of like when the shit hits the fan, oh, actually, I'm going to stand my ground. And and I never used to have that about me. I would in like a sporting environment or whatever, but in a certainly in a business environment, I would be the people pleaser. Oh shit, yes sir, no sir, how many bags full sir type like
Yeah,
thing. And
me too. Yeah, yeah. I see it. I see it in lots of leaders. Like, and and I think this is what happens is like, and it what the saying that comes to mind is what got us here won't get us there. So I think what happens is a lot of leaders people please do all the work, they pacify people, and it gets them to a point where the business can be successful, but then they become the bottleneck with that. They
yeah,
become so resentful, so freaking angry, they're passive aggressive. And then they get to this point where like I can't continue to run my business like this. And that's where I do a lot of
yeah,
work with people.
you can
Yeah.
definitely build a six-figure business through people pleasing, definitely, because I've done
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
But you
did.
can't build a seven-figure business through it. It's
No.
it, and it. I've got an example today where literally after we finish this recording, I've got a sack a client, and
Hmm.
and they haven't really done anything wrong, and we've not done anything wrong either, but they're a bad fit. Now, me 10 years ago, I would never have done that for fear of upsetting them, and but
Yeah.
it's what it takes.
Yeah, I think that's what I didn't have was boundaries. Like I didn't have like people would walk all over me. Like they'd come in and they'd ask for my time, I'd give it, and then that would mean would go home late to my partner or my previous wife, and I would oh yeah, I'll be home at 5, and I'll get home at 7. And it became such a repetitive thing that if I said I was home at 5, I'd be home at 7. So the trust was gone in the relationship.
Yeah,
And I thought I was just being helpful, but I was just being absolute walkover, and it was affecting my personal life. And that's what I think is like if we have clients, we've got no boundaries, people just walk all over us. And actually, it's a big part of what I do is help people. And actually, at the age of 25, I don't know about you, Joel. Did you even know what a boundary was? Did you even know what? It's just like I
yeah,
mean, my first partner said that to me. She's like, "You've got zero boundaries." I was like, "What even is a boundary? Is it just about being on time?"
yeah, yeah. Literally, I was very efficient, but no boundaries. Yeah, I get that. I get so that's really interesting, and I've been through this myself. Like, I would say I've been in two serious relationships before I got married. Um, you know, I I'm not going to sit here and say everything was my fault, but certainly if I'd had more boundaries in my life and a healthier relationship with myself, I would have been a better partner. How how did that kind of reflect in your relationship? What was going on? How did you start to notice? And the
Yeah,
reason I ask that is if you it's very confusing for a listener or someone who isn't a people pleaser to understand how someone can be so dedicated to pleasing people they don't know at the sacrifice of the person they're meant to love.
yeah. I actually would even give a definition of a boundary, and I use a little story because some people genuinely don't even know what that is because it's banded around for people that maybe you've done some therapy, you've been to a counselor, or maybe they haven't even done a good job of actually articulating what a boundary is. And the best way I can describe it, we lived in a house when I grew up where there was no lock on the toilet door. So you had to like make loads of noise and whistle if you were on the. And now also my house, where we've got 3 kids in our family. Our house was the house where everyone went to an after party or like have their friends over to stay. There was normally about 6 people in the house on a
Yeah,
Saturday morning.
I bet this is a stab in the dark, right? But I bet you grew up in North Wales. I bet you didn't even lock the front door.
No, no, gosh, no, 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 no locks on any doors. That was like
Yeah,
that was more it was like why you lock the door? Well, that was like a
yeah. Because
anyway.
like I talk to people like I'm from Shropshire, very similar vibe to North Wales, and I go to other parts of the country, and I'm like, oh yeah, people would just come and go all day.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Didn't they knock? I was like, no. What do you
Yeah,
mean?
that's it. Yeah,
So they were like, well,
exactly.
what's the point in having a front door then? I was like, keeps the draft out. Like, it's
That's it. And I think that's what, and that was the kind of the point is that, yeah, albeit the door was there, people would barge in on you on the toilet, and like you were embarrassed and they were embarrassed.
yeah,
And that was because you had no boundary.
Mine
So
was if I was in the bath.
yeah, yeah, like oh, that equally. Like if I'd be in the bath or go in the shower, and I'd have my brother's mate come in and use the toilet, but genuinely, like for most of the time, it was like the way I'd explain a boundary is having a boundary is like having a lock on a toilet door. It saves your embarrassment, it protects you, but it also protects the person. Because
Yeah,
and that's what very unboundaried people go through life. They don't have this kind of like fixed point where this is where I end and you begin. So they're late for everyone. They have people like ask them to do things and they do them and they put like they feel put upon. And the only way they know to communicate that was passive aggressive behavior, resent, anger. So they're like what I would call like a landmine. No one really knows where the where they say no because they can't say no. So that's what I didn't even understand that. I didn't even understand that. And I was doing that with my first partner. I used to push it later and later and later when I'd come home for tea. And yeah, and one day she just turned around and said, "Listen, I don't love you anymore." And like that was one of the reasons I was like, I was just taking the piss. And like at the time I couldn't see how I was at fault.
yeah,
But
'cause you felt like you were putting food on the table. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, how how can you do this to me? I'm the one working to. She didn't work. She played full-time tennis. Like she played tennis. I was she wasn't a professional tennis player. She was a lady of leisure. So I was like, oh, hang on a second. And then it was like, but I realized that it wasn't just me going through this. There were so many men that I spoke to, that really did have the same experience, and I wasn't alone.
and it's that like thinking about your partner and like like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that like they've got their needs too. Just because you're meeting their financial need doesn't mean that they've got security, emotional. It's and yeah, I've definitely been there as well where I'm like, look, I can take you on an amazing holiday. And
Yeah.
they're like, I just want you to have a cup of tea with me in the morning. It's like
Yeah, oh man, it was like, and that's the second part of probably of where I was as well. Is like I was emotionally absent because I was so in my own head thinking about business. I was absent in conversations, and not I probably wasn't the worst of the worst, but I was definitely not the best of what who I could have been. I
yeah.
could be in the room but not in the room. This was with family, this was with friends, and yeah, it just all started to take its toll when I got to 30. I had like a real awakening where I was like, I thought I was doing all right. And then my kind of life fell apart. And I really had to do a lot of the work. People talk about the work all the time, but I sacked all my clients. You're saying about sacking clients. I said to all my life coaching clients, said, listen, I can't coach you while I'm in this space working on me. I feel it's a disservice. I took a full-time role back in the gym, being the managing director, and I just worked on myself for like 5 years. Lots of therapy, and it was really interesting actually. I didn't realize I needed this until I actually experienced it, which was a group of men. I was around a group of men having a conversation, sharing stuff that was really deep and dark, and then guys would just say, "Yeah, me too," or like, "Oh yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, I've been through that." And I was like, "Oh right, well, all this shameful, horrible things I've been thinking about myself, or the stuff I've been doing, I felt was really bad." And I've just been met with love and acceptance, and that was really, really big for me as a leader as well, because I was really, I had 300 odd, clients, and I didn't want them to know what was going on. So I had to find a really safe container. I hate the word container, but at the same time, it's like a place where I could say, listen, this is what's going on. And I was just met with, yeah, that's normal. It's part of the deal. I remember I was like actually I was on a coaching call with do you know who Travis Sago is actually? You know
No.
Travis? Travis is like one of the best he's an offer specialist, really great offer writer. And I remember just like telling that this group of guys on his call on like how I'd been paying my staff too much, and I was so embarrassed as an entrepreneur, but overpaid my staff. And this multi-millionaire guy just laughed and he just said, "Ben, I realized I was paying my staff too much 10 years. 10 years too late. That's just like, oh, it's only been 3 years. So I think like when you get perspective from people like that, that's really, really helpful, especially as you're going through that process, because um you sometimes give yourself such a hard time. And having people reflect back is like, it's just a mistake that someone else has made in business. It really, really helped. And that's what I provide for the people now, is sometimes just that perspective of like, hey, listen, it's just part of the process.
Yeah, you sort of like hitting raw nerves with me over and over again as we go, but I quite like it. It's like some sort of sadomasochist podcast right now. But
So yeah, sorry, not sorry.
yeah, exactly. So I like it's the whole like a lot of these things, and particularly if you're in business. So there'll be plenty of people listening to this that perhaps did have a male role model in their lives, so they understand male dynamics, male boundaries, male emotions. But I guarantee 90% of the people who are listening to this didn't have a business role model when they started their business, and you just like flying blind. You're learning through error, and it's really interesting when you do something like overpaying your staff. I mean, like I'm sort of in the camp of like you can never overpay your staff, but I appreciate mathematically, yes, you can.
Yeah.
And it's that like knowing who can I lean on, who's been through this before, how can I avoid making mistakes that other people have already made for me, and then how do I become a better leader? So what made you transition from I'm coaching people in a gym, I'm teaching them how to stay in shape, sustain their bodies, whatever it might be, strength and conditioning, to actually I can help leaders get out of their own way and be essentially be better people.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It sounds like quite self-indulgent, but I wanted a bigger impact. I really knew that
Yeah,
I, I love helping. Like, so I started in professional football. I tried
yeah.
professional football for a very short amount of time. I didn't enjoy the
Name drop some teams. I'm
Chelsea, Feyenoord. I shadowed at Chelsea for a couple of weeks. Didn't enjoy the setup. Went to Feyenoord. It was exactly the same. It was just that the on the outside, football looks really attractive. On the inside,
yes.
it's political and it's so
And when you say this is strength and conditioning in football.
yeah, S&C,
Yeah,
yeah, for junior teams. Like I was looking at this, like I wanted to become a full-time S&C coach at a football club. And then I was like, after shadowing and seeing what was going on, I was like, nah, this is not for me. And I ended
yeah,
up training three women above their garage, doing some personal training. And I found it so impactful because they were telling me like how they were feeling more confident, how they felt like their life was changing so much from so little. And after like doing that at the gym and creating a system to get impact at the gym, so instead of having three clients, I had like 300 clients. I was like, this is great. The ripple was big. And then I was like, well, how can I have a bigger ripple? And it's like, actually,
yes,
well, if I can work, and I started doing corporate wellness in COVID, just tried that because I had to pivot the gym. I was like, we can't not bring money in to pay the staff. So we pivoted the gym to do some corporate wellness. And we affected 600 local staff with working with the leadership team because the leaders were healthy, the team got healthier, and we were trying to solve a sickness problem. But it wasn't a sickness problem, it was a happiness problem.
yeah,
So I really enjoyed it. I was like, this is amazing. I get to work with intimately with 10 women, and they were going out and affecting 60, 60 in their team. And this was just like it's so rewarding. And that was the point. Is like, right, okay, I'm going to take this into a leadership role and start working with solely leaders who work with, and have teams, and then my ripple will be bigger. And that's really like I also got fed up of talking about calories because there's only so many times you can talk about calorie. It's just like, but I genuinely, I wasn't that personal trainer that talked about calories. I talked about other things. But honestly, the that's why the mastermind is called the Mile Deep Mastermind. Is that at a certain point you're gonna have to go deep and learn about yourself. You
yeah,
absolutely have to learn about yourself because unless you've got all these other things right, like boundaries, good communication skills, another one, Joel, and maybe you might resonate with this one. I could not have a hard conversation. It's just,
Okay.
I don't know about you. I was like, I would do anything to avoid having the conversation. And even in my relationships, I would cheat on a partner rather than have
Break up with
the
them.
breakup chat. And this is, and I say that with still a little bit of shame from the past, but at the same time, I have heard so many guys say this to me. I would cheat on a woman just so I didn't have to break up with her. They just so they the pain of that
Yeah.
conversation is that they'd cheat on their partner just so she would break up with them.
I think that's so common that like the inability to have a difficult conversation raises itself as dysfunctional behavior.
Yeah.
So, like for me, it wasn't cheating, but it would be. And I've always been very good at having a deep and emotional conversation because I was raised by a female. Like, well, I don't know if that's a sexist comment or not. I don't mean it that way,
No,
but
no, that's absolutely right. It's like, yeah, normally, generally, men raised by women are more in touch with emotions.
yeah. So I could have a very deep conversation, but I couldn't have the important conversations. So important conversations in my life always blew up as like anger or
Yeah.
or frustration, and so you'd end up like talking about something else. It would be like, oh, the washing hasn't been done, or why hasn't the electrician been round, or I see there's still a fucking hole in the wall, or like whatever it might be. And I've got friends who they expressed it through cheating, other friends drinking, drugs, driving their car too fast. Like there's so many like
Yeah. Yeah.
indicators to that. What do you think in terms of yourself, where you had this self-realization that you had these behaviors, but also it's strange to want to have so much impact. Like it's a very entrepreneurial thing, but it's very hard to express why.
Um, as in like, so really, I've sat in front of people since I was 21. I've been very, very lucky to sit in an intimate space where people have disclosed things to me
Yeah,
since I was 21. And I just really just hold this belief that behind the doors, behind the eyes, behind the conversations that people don't have is that most people are doing the same things. They've got
yeah,
these dark, absolute, downright, sometimes shameful, crazy, dark behaviors that they just don't talk about. And I'm seeing, and this is something I see, is like the world is painted in this like, look at me, I'm perfect, I'm so shiny, I've got everything together. But behind the scenes, there's like so many dark things that they're doing or not doing. And I just realized that like I'm a very, very authentic, transparent person. I
yeah,
kind of am, I really am a WYSIWYG word. Like what you see is what you get. I will say if I've got something that's going on, I will say it. And I came to Joel, I said, listen, like I even talked about on the podcast, my organic traffic dried up literally overnight. It was like, what the frick? I was like, we were about to pay school fees in Dubai and our year-long rent and all that. I was like, oh my gosh, my traffic's just dried up. It's just like, and not enough people are talking about that sort of stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's the same with emotional dysfunction in a relationship or sex. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm gonna be that person that takes a stand for like nothing's perfect. There's no such thing as perfect people. And if you're a leader, you've got to simultaneously show up as the best version of yourself while simultaneously dealing with this natural dysfunction of being a human. It's just
yeah.
like,
It's really interesting. I love that. I absolutely love that, and I applaud you for it because, like, my my attempt at leadership is to show up as the best version of me, but be completely open about my vulnerabilities and difficulties. And in a business environment, so far, touch wood, it's been great. You know, I obviously repel people that don't like it, and I'm cool with that. That's fine. What I have found is certainly in some of my friendship circles, particularly friends from school or whatever, see me as an oversharer. They're like they don't want to go that deep because it shines a light on them. It creates a mirror and reflects at them. And I used to really struggle with that. I used to really find that really difficult. Where I'd say to a mate, yeah, and sex is a great example because that is really awkward. So, it'd be very unusual for a bloke to turn to an old schoolmate and say, I'm not getting any action at home," and I think, and then to like say, "I think it's me." Like
Mm,
that just would not happen. And I realised that for me, that wasn't about it wasn't about my mates. It was about me. And actually, like, well, start surrounding yourself with people that you can say that to.
yeah.
Start putting yourself in situations where you're happy to say that. And it like I unravelled. And I mean, it's literally only in the last couple of years, I went on a podcast in London, and just before we started recording, the lady said, like, "I'd love to know your story. How deep do you want to go?" And I was like, "All right, I'm gonna throw a hand grenade here and see what happens." And I just
Yeah.
went for it, like both barrels. And it wasn't. And I said to her at the very beginning, "I'm not saying any of this because I want sympathy. I'm saying it because if one person listens and they've been through it too, it will help them."
Mm.
And my God, my life completely changed from that moment.